Well, hello there, everybody, and welcome to our fabulous live stream of the evening where we're going to be talking about mic techniques. We're going to talk about stage mic technique. We're going to talk about studio mic technique. We're going to talk about different microphone types. If you've ever wondered what is a dynamic, what is a condenser, what does cardioid mean, we're going to talk about pickup patterns. I'm Laura Davidson. I'll be your guide along this journey. If you have any questions, please throw them into the chat. We will be answering them as we go along. I have my colleague Eric Warren here, who's going to be monitoring the chat and feeding me questions too. But please, we want this to be interactive. I want to know what you want to learn first and foremost. I don't want to just talk at you for the next little while here. So I work for Shure. Clearly, I have some logos going on here. And I'm in market development, which essentially means I get to go into live streams into your home. I get to go out into the real world and teach people about this incredible, almost 96-year-old brand. We make microphones, we make headphones, we make wireless microphone systems, conferencing systems. But tonight we're going to be talking about some really special stage microphones and studio microphones that we offer. So I thought it'd be really kind of fun to give you a little basic overview of what microphones are in case you're not familiar. So we're going to be talking about two of these three types tonight. The first one being a dynamic, the second one being a condenser. I'm not going to talk about ribbons too much. If you have any questions, I can answer them for you, but I'm not lucky enough to have one of those on my person right now. So we're going to be talking about dynamic and condensers specifically. Now, when you see condenser microphones, that's that one in the middle, most people typically think that that's a studio microphone. That one that you're seeing there is a side address condenser, which I have right next to me here, the KSM32. But they're also great for stage use because I'm talking into a condenser microphone right now. So what is the difference here? What does it mean to be a dynamic or a condenser mic? Real quick overview for you. Dynamic microphones are great for the stage, for louder applications, because of how they're physically built. They take a little bit more physical momentum to move the diaphragm, and the way the microphone is designed, it has a thin membrane called the diaphragm that's attached to a coil that's surrounding a magnet. So when you talk or you sing into it, it vibrates the diaphragm, moves the coil around the magnet, creates electromagnetic field and a signal down the mic. So that takes a little bit of physical energy, right? So that's why it's better for those louder applications. So you'll typically see those on stage, on drums, on instruments, but they're great for vocals like our SM58, which is a legendary microphone. Condensers, on the other hand, are a little bit of a different, more sensitive type of microphone in the way that they're designed as well. And they're more common in the studio, but like I said, you can use them on the stage. This is our KSM9, which I'm talking into right now, which is a stage condenser microphone. So they're really great for capturing details and nuances because the way that it's designed, it has a much thinner membrane for the diaphragm. So it takes less physical energy to move it. And instead of having that coil to move and surround a magnet to move, it just reacts and creates an electrostatic charge because it has an electrically charged backplate. So that's why if you've ever seen something called phantom power on your mixing consoles or boards, it's referring to that. So condenser microphones require phantom power to power that backplate to give it the electric charge. So because of that, it doesn't take as much momentum to move it. And that's how you can have that more nuances and subtle differences. Ribbon microphones, again, great microphone for you to use in the studio. Not really great for live vocal applications. They're the most natural sounding. They're naturally bidirectional, meaning that they hear from both the front and the back of the microphone. So those are really great for strings, drums, guitars, especially guitar cabinets. You can put one in front of the cabinet and one facing, or have it facing the wall and capture the reflections of the cabinet as well. So those are ribbon microphones, and these are actually the oldest. A lot of people think they're the newest, but the technology is somewhat similar to a dynamic in that it works with a magnet. So instead of having that magnetic coil, it has a very thin piece of corrugated material, and that's the diaphragm, and it's suspended between two magnetic poles. So when that moves back and forth, you get that magnetic field. So that's what we're talking about there in terms of the basics of the three different types of microphones that we're going to go through tonight, but we're going to primarily focus on dynamic condenser for purposes of this evening's demonstration. But the other thing that I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview on are polar patterns. And you might have heard that. A lot of people can sometimes interchange polar patterns and microphone types. I've often heard people say, I have a cardioid mic, which is accurate in certain themes, but you probably have a cardioid dynamic mic or a cardioid condenser mic. And that's referring to the polar pattern or how the microphone physically picks up the sound. So if we look at this slide real quick, you can see some of the more common polar patterns that are out there. Cardioid being the most common. Cardioid coming from cardio for heart because it is heart-shaped. Right now, the KSM9 that I'm talking into is a cardioid pattern. It's actually a switchable microphone. This one is the KSM that can switch between cardioid and supercardioid. And because it can hear in that heart-shaped pattern, it's picking up from the front, but not from the rear and not too much from the side. So if I go off axis a little bit, you can hear me disappear a little bit. And this is why mic technique is going to be so important. That's what we're going to get into in just a second. And then some of the other polar patterns that we're going to talk about, supercardioid, that is this guy right here. Our beta 58 is a supercardioid, and essentially it has a tighter polar pattern. So instead of having that wider heart-shaped pattern that this KSM9 has, it's a little bit tighter. So if I go off axis with this one, I disappear much more quickly. So this is a great microphone if you have really good mic technique. You know how to work the mic and how to get the sweet spot, which is what we're going to talk about. So let's do that now. Let's start talking about how to work these microphones before we get too far in the weeds with some other types. But with the Beta 58, this is a supercardioid, and when you are singing live and on stage, you want to make sure that you are facing the microphone towards the sound source as much as possible. Microphones are not smart instruments in terms, I feel like I'm criticizing it, that sounds really bad, but they're not going to reach out and listen. They have a fixed and finite polar pattern, and they can only pick up what's right in front of them. So you want to make sure that when you're using the microphone that you are staying right on the mic. And a good rule of thumb, pun intended, is to keep about 2 fingers off the mic. So if you see from the side here, and let me get this back actually, I just dropped my Stream Deck so that I can switch over and you can see it a little bit better. There we go. Okay, so now 2 fingers off like this. That's going to keep you from having what are called plosives. Plosives are those nasty pop sounds that you get when you have your consonants, your P's, T's, B's. And it's occurring because you're hitting the diaphragm with a plosive pop of air. Now, our microphones, some are better than others at rejecting those plosives. The beta microphones happen to be one of them because of this hardened grill. But a good rule of thumb is to keep 2 fingers off so you're not going to be popping the diaphragm. And then you can also just kind of turn off axis to the mic a little bit, and that'll keep those plosives from happening. So instead of being plosive right on top, you can say plosive into the side and alleviate those. And that often happens and helps a little bit more when you're in a studio, which I'll show you on the KSM 32 in just a bit. So keeping that in mind, you want to have your 2 fingers off. And when you're using the mic, like I said, it's not smart. It's not going to be listening to what you're doing and adjusting. You have to adjust. So if you pull off the mic, it'll get thinner and further away. If you get closer to the mic, you'll have something called proximity effect. Now, some people like that sound. Proximity effect is a buildup of bass frequencies, which can sound really effective and cool on certain voices, but can get kind of fatiguing to your listeners. So you want to make sure that you have that 2-finger gap so that you're keeping the microphone in its sweetest spot so that it can do its job. Now, if you need to sing or wail and sing something loud, you'd want to pull off the mic, and that's going to make it sound still full enough if you're giving it enough volume without getting thin. That's the other side of the coin, though. So proximity effect if you're too close, too thin if you're too far away. So that's why you want to find that nice sweet spot in the middle and keep those 2 fingers off. Microphones take a little bit of getting used to. If you're going to be practicing, if you're going to be using the microphone on stage, you want to be able to try it out before you get out there on the stage and start jumping all over the place. And if you have the opportunity to do it in your house, I highly recommend it. But now we have the opportunity to do things on live streams like this. So you can always test that out and before you go onto the stage. Because the stage brings a couple of other things to keep in mind when you're using microphones, especially handheld microphones like this. This microphone is the Beta 58, which is a supercardioid pattern, which if we go back here, you'll see that one. You'll notice it's a cardioid, heart shape with a little bit of a tail out the back. Now, if you were to be using floor wedge monitors, the kinds that sit on the floor and point up at you, the speakers, this can be a little bit of a tricky part if you're using, or tricky thing if you're using a supercardioid, because it could potentially feed back. So what you want to do is not have your supercardioid beta microphone pointed directly at your floor wedge. You want to have it pointed away and not directly at that, because you could have that potential for feedback. What is feedback? We've all heard it. It's that squealing noise that you get when you put your microphone into the speaker. It causes a feedback loop because it's feeding itself incessantly and causes that squeal, which is wildly uncomfortable. So as the singer, something else to keep in mind is to never, never, never take your mic and point it down at that floor wedge. You can point it out to your audience all you want. Do the rock star moves, have them sing along. Just don't point it down at your floor wedge, because you will get that feedback. So something to think about there. And I'm jumping through and covering a ton of stuff here. If you have questions as I'm going along, please, again, throw those into the chat. I want to know what you want to know, because I could talk about microphones all night long. So just to switch up polar patterns so we can hear a little bit of a difference here with a different mic, let's do this. Okay. This is a very special kind of animal here. This is the KSM-8. And this is a dual diaphragm dynamic mic. Now I'm getting really tricky with you. Okay, I just told you what the concepts are, and now I'm saying dual. Like, I'm going to just throw you off completely. But the KSM-8 is a very cool dynamic cardioid pickup pattern mic. But this one has an even sweeter spot, larger sweet spot than a typical cardioid mic. So if I go like this and I'm talking, you can still hear me. Whereas with this one, if I do that, it sounds a little phasey, right? It sounds a little weird because this is that super cardioid mic. So that's why it's so important to know your polar pattern when you're choosing a microphone. If you know you have great microphone technique to start with, why are you watching this? No, if you know you have great mic technique, then a super cardioid can be really effective for you because it will block out the sounds of the band and the audience and all the other things coming in so that you're not getting that bleeding into the mic. But if you know you're not the best with your mic technique, maybe think about giving the KSM-8 a try, because I can get all over the place. I can, not give all of my most attention if I'm just staring into the eyes of someone in the audience and losing focus. It gives me a little bit more forgiveness there, but that's inherent to this KSM-8 specifically. It is a really great microphone for live application, for speaking. If you are looking for something to alleviate someone else's poor microphone technique, let's say you're in a house of worship application, if you're ever doing something like Joys and Concerns, or where the audience is the congregation is speaking, and they all want to speak like this is going to be your most forgiving option there. But you never want to do that. What is happening here when I do this? I'm talking across the microphone. Remember how we talked how the microphone is going to react to what is going into the mic and vibrating the diaphragm? If you're talking over the top, it's not going to be able to do that effectively. It's going to be trying to do that and not doing its best job. However, if you have people who don't have great mic technique, the KSM-8 can be a little bit more forgiving for that particular application. Okay, so that's how you can use this cardioid microphone and how it's different from a supercardioid. But let's switch it up a little bit more here and talk about some studio techniques. So if you were to be using this microphone in the studio, it would sound great, but oftentimes people want a little bit more detail. They want to capture the breath noise. They want to capture the nuances of every performance, which you don't really have the luxury of doing as much on the stage without capturing a little bit too much of the room. So that's why they would use something like this KSM-32 side address condenser. So let's switch up to that one real quick and hear what that sounds like. Bear with me. You'd think I would have practiced that enough now to know where it actually plugs in, but no, I have to look every single time. Okay, so I, right now, am in a larger room in my house that has hardwood floors, glass French doors, and high ceiling. So this is not fair to the KSM32 right now because it's perfect for perfectly treated rooms or studio spaces because it can capture all of the breath noise, all of the nuances of the voice. So if I were to sing something like, yeah, oh, it can capture that detail without me having to really push. And that's why a studio side address condenser is so stinking cool. But if you're in a room like this, it's going to capture more of the echoes. You can hear when I clap, you can hear the reverberation of the room. So that's why when you're using these microphones, you want to make sure that you have kind of the ability to control and choose where you're going to be using it, taking that into consideration. This KSM9 really wants to be the star of the show tonight. What's going on? It keeps floating into my shot. So side address condensers, fantastic microphones in the studio for vocals when you have the ability to control the environment that you're in. So if you're looking for something to capture those details, the KSM32 is an incredible option. If you are like me and you don't have the ability to have an acoustically treated space because you are trying to make do with what you have, then you can use something like our SM7B, which I will plug in 2 seconds. Okay, so now we're in the same space. And you can hear my voice, you can hear all the details, you can hear a lot less of the room, but still have those details. This is a dynamic cardioid mic. Were you all paying attention? I'm quizzing you now. What does that mean? So it has that magnet, it has the coil, takes a little bit more effort to move it, but the SM7B, which is a legendary microphone for broadcast, podcast, recording applications, will give you that nice, close nuance and the ability to get up close and personal with the mic, but not have any of the room noise entering into the equation as much. So that's kind of the difference between the side address condenser as opposed to a studio dynamic microphone. So I'm seeing some cool comments come in. I'm going to switch up so I'm not holding this mic. 1 second. Okay, let's go back to my KSM8 for the moment. So Ian was asking about some commentary and info on mics for voiceover work, and that's a really great question. So for voiceover applications, you're going to want to use something that can capture all the nuances of the voice. So if you are able to use a side address condenser, that's going to give you all of those details and richness of the voice, especially a large diaphragm condenser like this KSM32. It has the frequency response to be able to capture low and high frequencies beautifully. But if you're not able to be in a controlled space, I would highly recommend using something like the SM7B or our MV7, which is this one right here. And this is a dynamic microphone with XLR and USB outputs on it so that you can use it in imperfect rooms and spaces and get that great sound. But for voiceover specifically, I'd recommend using a dynamic if you're not in a treated space, a condenser if you are, and if you want to get super fun and crazy, you can also use a shotgun mic. Those are very good for voiceover work as well. My apologies, I don't have one of those with me tonight. Okay, Beta 57 from J Rabbit Music. Can we also talk about the Beta SM57? What's so versatile about that microphone? That's a really great question. So Beta microphones in general tend to be a little bit more versatile in that they have a little bit of a bump in the higher frequencies. So it gives you a little bit more presence than a SM57 or an SM58 would. It also has that supercardioid pattern, so it makes it that much more tight and able to focus in on the sound that you're actually putting into the microphone itself. So with the Beta 57, it's super versatile for instruments as well as vocals. I tend to prefer it on male vocals than female. That's just my personal experience. But why it's so versatile, to answer that, I think it's just because it has that tighter pattern. It's super rugged. Beta especially has a hardened grill, so it won't dent as easily. So it's super durable to use. And let's see. Also see, I want to ask. Okay. I want to ask the Shure experts, which of the following Shure headset mics is better suited for when I occasionally do vocal harmony with my multiple bands? Did they give examples of the following headset mics? I don't see them in the chat, so we can come back to that one. Is a pop filter always beneficial, or are there some drawbacks? That's a great question from Canning Content. They are usually beneficial. Caveat there is where you place the pop filter. So if you were to place it, like I have it right here, I'm giving it that 2-finger space that we talked about. And that's all you really need. So if you were to put a pop filter right up on it, it's going to defeat the purpose of the pop filter and you'll still get plosives. It will take a little bit of the frequency response off, so it won't be quite as present. It might change the character of the mic slightly. I have not ever had an experience where I've said, man, that pop filter really colored that tone way too much. So I see benefits outweighing the drawbacks. Okay, I'm going to keep on forging ahead here unless you're throwing some more questions in there at me. I can't see anything that's going on in YouTube. Y'all could be having a huge party over there. I'm just getting the filtered comments sent my way. So I hope you're having as much fun as I am up in here. So I am a singer-songwriter by trade when I'm not doing this for Shure. So I thought maybe if you wanted to hear how it responds to vocals, we can do that as well. Not that I'm going to belt out an aria or anything, but I'm happy to do that. But in terms of other content that we can go through, we can also talk about some tips and tricks for live performance specifically. When you are, just a side note here, when you are performing, if you have the ability and luxury to do a sound check, you want to make sure that you are singing out to your highest level. There's nothing worse than getting to your sound check or getting to your performance and you really let it all hang out. And then unfortunately you didn't during your sound check. So you want to be friendly to your engineer and the front of house engineer. You want to make sure that you're giving them that true signal so that they can get you where you need to be and also match your monitors. So that's just kind of like my own PSA for the evening. And also, you know, when you are using the microphone, you want to make sure that you are not doing this. You do not ever want to cup the mic. Now, a lot of people think, but it looks so cool. And it might in certain worlds, but you are killing the microphone. You're doing it a disservice. I'll show you on the beta. 1 second. Okay, so I have this beautiful dynamic supercardioid mic. And if I cup it, I am turning it into an omnidirectional microphone. I am taking years of engineering and design, and I am ruining it for everyone. I am also going to make this microphone incredibly prone to feedback. So that is my public service announcement. Don't cup the mic. This is the handle. This is not the handle. This will destroy all of the things that the engineers at Shure and everywhere else have worked so hard. And also, our shock mounts are built into these microphones to allow you to hold it from this handle and get all wild and crazy and do your rock star moves and pull it in and out of the stand and have a great time. So don't worry about it. Don't hold it from the microphone head itself. It will just make it sound yucky. Okay, so 2 fingers. Okay, CP asks, thanks for the tip, or says, thanks for the tip about the 2 fingers from the mic. How come I see a lot of performers eating the mic? Well, some people like to do that. I'm fully guilty of it, 100%. It's only recently that I've gotten better. I'm a recovering mic eater. That sounds horrible, but it's true. I think it's a security thing, honestly. I think a lot of people eat the mic because if you're like me and you're accompanying yourself on piano, it's kind of anchoring me to the mic. It's taken a lot to kind of pull myself off and realize that, oh, wait, I can accomplish this same effect and get this same push without having to eat the mic by just bumping up the gain. And let me know if you want to talk about anything gain structure wise too when we're talking about vocal mic setting and mic technique. But main thing is CP, if you're going to eat the mic, you're going to get proximity effect. Again, some people like to use that to their advantage, but it can get really fatiguing. So keeping those 2 fingers off was going to help fight plosives, help fight proximity effect, and really let the microphone shine. So why are they eating it? I don't know. It's their security blanket. I think that's my answer to that one. So microphone technique, in addition to the 2 fingers off, if you're going to wail, a lot of people can just forget sometimes to pull the microphone away because, again, we think that the microphone is intelligent. It's a beautiful instrument. It is not an intelligent instrument. You need to make it work for you. So if I go, hey, yeah, and then bring it back at the end, you can hear that push away, yeah, and then come and finish the tail end so that it captures the nuance. So when you're going to get loud, pull away. When you're going to get soft, come in close. And remember that you don't want to overload the mic by singing too loudly into it, and that's where you have to find that sweet spot. And the only way to do that is to really practice. The microphone is your instrument. So as a vocalist, I cannot stress the importance of trying out the microphones whenever you possibly can. So instead of going and just buying the mic that you think you need, make sure that you sing through it. Because I'm actually going to switch back over to the KSM9 because it's my favorite, and you'll hear a difference in the sound. One sec. Okay. So this is my condenser microphone for the stage. So it has a little bit more presence in the high end, which I tend to like for my voice. So I sang into a Beta 58 for many, many years. And then I switched to this, and I love it. I also, which I did not bring with me tonight, like as silly, is the SM86, which is an under-known and much beloved mic by me, and it is also a stage condenser. So Eric, I'm making him frantically type in the search to find that one, but if you can find it, that'd be great, because it's a great microphone. And so this just kind of goes to show how each voice can sound different on the different mics. So if we do a quick kind of ABC, so here is my Beta 58. Yeah. KSM8. Oh, yeah. And you can see I have that larger sweet spot. Oh, yeah. Much brighter on that top end. So that's why I like my KSM8. And I can have those nuances that we were talking about with the condenser. So you can hear that little sparkle on the top end and hear a little bit more sibilance, but not in a harsh way. That's inherent to the design of the mic, which I actually have. If we were going to get super geeky and fun here, let me see if I have it to show. Yes, I do. Fun with PowerPoint. Okay, so this is the microphone that I am showing you right now. And you can see here the frequency response and the polar pattern and how it listens. So you'll see when you're hearing that top end kind of glisten, that's where it's boosting it up in the top. So it can be a little harsh for some, but for my particular instrument, I love it. If we do a comparison here, you can see the KSM8, and it's much more flat and even. And that's why it's so great when you're using this microphone and you have somebody who does not have great microphone technique, because it's not going to boost, it's not going to cut, it's just going to give you that natural flat reproduction and have a much wider sweet spot. So that's hopefully not just making you go like, what am I looking at? These look like a bunch of squiggly lines. Hopefully you're like, oh yes, light bulb moment. I totally get that. And if not, ask me and I will tell you again. All right. So any other questions coming in, guys? I'm not seeing any in the chat, so I'm just going to keep chitty chatting here as we go. If we want to talk studio mics, we can also hear the difference between the MV7 and the SM7B and the KSM32. That could be kind of fun, because the MV7 was designed for people to use in not so great spaces. And so I think it's kind of a cool mic. Actually, I think it's a really cool mic, but kind of a cool mic to show, because you don't really think that this would be for musicians. A lot of people say, oh, that's a podcasting mic. I've seen that on all my favorite podcasters or live streamers. True, it's a great mic for that. However, it sounds fantastic in these types of applications where you have a lot of room reflections. So if I were to switch this over, I'm going to pull it out of my Beta 58. I wish you could see what's in front of me right now, because you would just laugh. It's like a mad scientist's chemistry set up in here, except with microphones. Okay, so now you're hearing the MV7. Let's switch that around so it's a little bit easier to hold. And I'm plugging into the XLR, which the cool thing about this particular mic is it can have XLR or it can have USB. So if you do not own a mixer, if you don't have an interface, this is a great mic to get you up and running with recording or podcasting very quickly and easily. You can hear how great it sounds when I'm in this room. You're not hearing any of those reflections. So if I compare it to the KSM32, okay, hold on, stand by. See, this time I looked. Okay, so if I have this one and then I compare it over to my KSM32, you're going to hear so much more of the room, except it's not. So much more. Whereas this microphone really blocks it all out. So it kind of depends. Oops, I switched the wrong one. That's why it's not working. Hold on. See, mad scientist. Don't trust Laura after 8 o'clock to switch microphone inputs. It's never a good idea. All right, switching this up. Hold on. There we go. Now we're cooking with gas. All right. This is the MV7. And you can hear that it's nice and isolated. This is the KSM32, which sounds delightfully bright and beautiful, but also much roomier and not in a good way. So that's why if you are in a space like this, do yourself a favor and get a dynamic microphone that will give you a much more controlled sound that you can then control and adjust accordingly. All right, switching it up again. Back to my KSM9, my favorite. Okay, saw some other things come in here. Let's see. What's the difference between the Beta 87 and Laura's favorite KSM9? That's an excellent question. Beta 87 has that supercardioid pickup pattern. And if I show you its frequency response, hopefully you can see that now, you'll see the difference here, and especially if I shift it. So see how it has that lower roll off and that not quite as much of a boost up in the 10K region. Let me switch it over here to my KSM9 for comparison's sake, and now you can see the difference there. So the Beta 87 has a little bit more of a boost and a little bit more of a crispy top end, which a lot of people like. For my voice, I'm just kind of partial to the KSM9. So you'll see that sharper climb in the 87 in the high frequencies, whereas the KSM9 has a slower, gradual, and a just bump right up in the top. So I hopefully that answered that. That was kind of a nuanced Laura answer. All right, let's see here. So SS says, I move the dynamic mic when I get loud. What do I do for the condenser mic? Should I step back? Same thing. Hey! Same thing. Condenser mic, dynamic mic, you just have to pull off. So it takes a little bit more getting used to with a condenser because it is more sensitive, but it works the same way. The louder you get, the more you want to pull away so that you're not going to overload that microphone. Dynamics can take that a little bit more. Okay, large diaphragm or small, better for acoustic guitar. Oh, I'm a small diaphragm kind of gal for acoustic guitar. Eric might disagree. I don't know. He can fight me for it later. But we make pencil condenser microphones with a small condenser, small capsule that work really great, especially if you do the stereo XY pattern. The KSM 137 is a really great example of that. I tend to like the sound because you can focus in more. So if you wanted to place it on the 12th fret or if you're wanting to place it on the sound hole, you have a little bit more control as opposed to the large diaphragm, which is going to capture your fret noise and capture the resonance. So I guess that also kind of depends on the instrument that you're using. Sir Cats-a-Lot is number one, my favorite name of the night, but is the Beta 58 different from the SM58? Great question. It absolutely is. Not only by sound, but by looks and design. But the Beta 58 It has this blue ring, and that's not just because it's cute. It's different because it has a supercardioid pattern as opposed to the cardioid pattern of the SM58. It also has this hardened steel grill. So if you've had a 58, you know how durable it is, but you might know that the grill can dent a little bit. It's actually made to do that. It's like a crumple zone so that it won't damage the capsule itself. But with the Beta 58, it's made to be more durable there. It also has a different handle and a different shock mount. So more tighter polar pattern, more durable, even more durable than the 58. What other differences am I forgetting? Eric, I'm forgetting something, I feel like. But thanks for the question, Sir Cats-a-lot, and thanks for the awesome name. It's also 4 dB louder. That's right. Thanks. See, Eric, this is why Eric is here, because he's like, duh, it's because of the neodymium magnets that it's 4 dB louder, and I forget these things. That's why I love him, because he throws these things in. And plus, he just wanted me to say neodymium on air, and I did. So, yeah, anyway, what else here? Anyone else throwing comments in? So, yeah, there's a lot of different mics out there. Beta mics. So here's our ranges, in case you're wondering, because I've thrown all kinds of alphabet soup at you. SM, it used to stand for studio microphone when it was first launched. It stands for stage microphone now, if you think about it that way. SM57, 58, 55. What else? SM86. That's my favorite one. Those are kind of like your workhorse microphones, sound great on everybody, everything, speech, voiceover, performance. Beta line of microphones have that more professional grade to them because they're going to be more durable. They're going to have the tighter pattern of supercardioid so that you can have more control over how your performance is coming through. So better for someone who's already got some mic technique. KSM is the professional line of microphones. So that's when you're going to get into your KSM 9, KSM 8, and all of the side address condensers over here, or the pencil condensers. So kind of something to think about there, very broad definition. And we also had, yes, Matt asking more top end. Yes, more top end in the betas. To answer that, to go back to Sir Cats-a-lot. Because I just wanted to say Sir Cats-a-lot again. All right, so we've talked about how the microphones work, studio, stage, a couple different applications there. What we have not talked about is how to use a wireless microphone. So I'm not going to plug one in because I just couldn't make that happen right now, but I did want to address this. So this is our beautiful microphone here. This is an SLXD from our wireless line called SLXD. And this is the SLXD2 KSM8 transmitter. Now, when you are using one of these microphones, it looks like a regular microphone because it is. A couple of things to keep in mind though. This right here, this is not just the cute end of the mic. Okay, this is the antenna of the mic. So when you are talking into a microphone or singing into a wireless mic, you want to make sure you're holding it up here and not here. If you do that, you'll be prone to something called dropouts, where you're losing your signal, and you'll look at your sound person and be like, what the heck? And it's really your fault. So just don't do that. Grab the microphone here, hold it like you would a regular stage microphone, and go from there so that you're not grabbing the antenna. Be friendly to the microphone, be friendly to your front of house, and you won't experience that. But other than that, a wireless microphone functions just like your favorite wired microphones. We make dynamic capsules for that. We make condenser capsules for that. Again, that was the KSM8, which is this microphone, but in its wireless version. It's different identity, secret identity. So just something to think about when you're using the microphone is how to hold it, but it's the same thing. Are the on-off switches silent on the microphones? That's a great question. I'm assuming you're asking about some of our SM microphones that have the built-in switch. And yes, they are designed to be silent. It kind of depends on how you do it. If you were to, really roughly do it, I think you could probably produce a handling noise, but they are designed to be silent when you do it. And on wireless microphones, yes, it is silent when you go from off to on. Hopefully that answers that. All right, is PGA 52 or Beta 52 kick drum mics better for bass speaker amplification, or Beta 57 is better with more higher frequency for the tweeter? And I have no idea how to answer that because I have not tried that specific application. Eric, if you can weigh in, I would love to hear you. I have never used it. Oh, he did. Okay, he answered it already. So Matt put the question in the chat and Eric beat him to it. So hopefully Music Man Can Rock, another great name, you got your answer. Okay, so when you're using your microphones, studio or stage, you want to make sure that you are keeping that proximity effect in the top of mind all the time. So even if you're just speaking, I don't know if you can see because I'm on the mic right now. I'm still keeping those two fingers off. And it's super important when you're using this kind of mic, when you're using a condenser mic, that's what's going to be the key feature there. So you want to make sure that you're keeping the space and working the microphone depending on what you are doing. If you're using a broadcast mic, then it is a little bit different because you can get up close and personal, especially if you're using something like the SM7B. It's actually made to do that, and I should show this because it's kind of a fun little thing here. So the capsule is all the way back here. So that's why with the SM7B, you can get so close to the mic itself because you have another 2 inches before you get there. So it has its own built-in pop filter. So that's why it's giving you that nice warm sound without giving you the buildup of bass we know and love as proximity effect. All right, SS. I use an X2U for recording via my SM58 on my computer. If I buy the KSM32, can I connect it to my computer via the X2U? Or do I need something like the Focusrite Scarlett sound interface? You can use the X2U with a KSM32 because the X2U can provide phantom power. So absolutely you can. I would totally recommend giving it a try. And if you want a little bit more wiggle room, then that's when you can step up to an interface. But yes, it absolutely will do that for you. Jim asks, when singing loud, how far back do you typically go? Not far. I mean, if you see some singers on stage way out here, that's not going to pick you up. If you're singing really loud, you have to work it. And it's not just one note. Like, you can't, I'm going to sing, so watch out. You can't just, say, hey, I'm going to sing back here and hope it hears me. Because it won't when you get quiet. You got to pull it back in. So you just have to keep moving the mic. So if you're going to keep it off, hey, about 6 inches, and then bring it back in when you're going to get quiet. 6 inches max is my rule of other thumb. Okay, cool. I wish I could see all of you and see these questions come in so that we could have way more fun. And let me see what else we can bring up in this fun little chat here. So we talked about polar patterns. We talked about side address condenser. I don't have a picture of a pencil condenser so you could see that, but I love that question about guitar miking. And microphone technique when it comes to instruments is a whole other bag of chips. Like we could talk about that on a whole other live stream because I'm focusing on vocal technique. Sorry, I am biased. But there are many different ways to mic guitars, strings, drums, and there's debates about it, and we could talk about it for days. But if you were to get a microphone, like a lot of people ask, if I were to get one microphone, what would it be? You can do so many things with an SM57. You can do so many things with an SM58. SM57 can be really versatile, stage and studio. You can EQ it to sound fantastic on live vocals as well. So that's kind of a good place to start. It will do overheads, it'll do snare, it'll do guitar cabs, it'll do bass. And then for overheads, you can kind of go with side address condensers. That's my personal favorite. And we usually start with application-based questions, and that's how we always guide our conversations with customers. How will you be using it? Where will you be using it? And then we talk about, what do you want to do in the future, or what's the budget look like? But it always starts with how you want to use it. Okay. I have some PGX wireless sets with low usage. Any significant advantage at all to upgrade to digital version like the PGX-D? And what's the difference between PGX and BLX? Great questions. Question. So the PGX-D, I can't recommend. I can't say enough good things about recommending or jumping up to that PGXD. You're going to have much more robust signal strength. The digital signal is cleaner, clearer, and PGXD is super simple to use. If you're familiar with PGX, very similar to that. And PGX and BLX, both analog systems, both super simple, but BLX is our easiest system to get up and rocking, and also the most robust in that analog and in that price point. So if you have the PGX, if you're okay with it, I would still recommend going to the digital, just so that you can maintain your compliance with all of the current regulations that are out there for frequencies. Okay, so I have talked for 45 minutes. And I hope that you have learned some things. I hope that you have some other questions in there, but primarily just to kind of go through, again, we talked about dynamic microphones. We talked about condenser microphones and why using a dynamic on stage can be a little bit more friendly unless you're using one that is designed specifically for stage, like the KSM9 that I'm talking into right now, which is a stage condenser microphone. We also talked about side address condensers for studio use, like my KSM32 right here. And we talked about the SM7B, legendary, iconic, dynamic microphone for broadcasting, podcasting, and recording. And we also talked about the MV7. I'm just going to keep pulling microphones from stage left, stage right, and see if anybody realizes how many microphones are here. MV7 is our dual USB XLR microphone. And we also talked about, I see a question come in about phantom power. What does it mean and what does it refer to? Sir Katzelot, again, coming through with the killer question and killer name. Phantom power refers to the microphone that is, or the technology and power that is required to power a condenser microphone. So this is a just quick slide that gives you an overview here. If you see that plus 48V on your mixer, on your interface, that's what it's referring to. So it's adding the 48 volts to the back plate of a condenser microphone, and that's what gives it that charge so that it can respond and make that electromagnetic field, as opposed to the dynamic microphone, which uses the coil attached to the diaphragm. So this is your dynamic microphone. This is the condenser. And that's why you have phantom power, to provide that charge to the backplate. Hopefully that answers that one. And Eric has added that phantom power as it travels down the microphone cables without an extra power supply. So yes, so it provides the backplate charge for your condenser microphone and then goes down the cables. But it will not hurt your microphone. It will not blow up your dynamic microphone. It won't even really blow up your ribbon microphone, which it used to do. But just keep in mind, you should probably not turn it on when you are using a ribbon unless it is a phantom powered ribbon mic. Okay, great. What else are we covering? Anything else last minute in there? Matt is... See, I can see Matt and Eric in Zoom, and I can't... Thank God they're here, because I'd be just talking to a wall for this entire time, and that would be great. And it's sad that you can't see them, because they have an incredible studio setup. If you think I have a lot of mics coming out of the woodwork, Eric has about 90 behind him right now, and it's very impressive. All right. What are your thoughts using a cloud lifter on your SM7B? That is a great question, Avi. I am using a cloud lifter on the SM7B, and that is because SM7Bs are naturally quieter. It's how the microphone is built. It's the circuitry. So you need that inline boost or something that can provide that inline gain boost so that it can get it up about 30 dB. So actually 60 is what the cloud lifter provides. So that's just getting you to where the microphone needs to be. It's line level, mic level. We could go into that on a whole other conversation as well, but it's going to get it up to where that level needs to be to adjust your gain without introducing noise. So that's why using a cloud lifter is really helpful with the SM7B, unless you have a preamp that can provide that without using it. Hopefully that answered that. And you do want to make sure when you're using a cloud lifter that you enable phantom power for the cloud lifter, not for the SM7B. The SM7B is a dynamic mic that does not require phantom power. All right. So we talked about all the different mics that you can use. Dynamic, great for stage. Condenser, great for studio. Hybrid microphones, great for both. Podcasting, streaming, recording music. And it just depends. Again, I cannot emphasize enough when you are choosing your microphone to try it as much as possible. Go to your L&M and see what you can try, because they are on hand and ready for you to rock out with. Because like I said, it's going to sound very different for every instrument that you try it on. This is my instrument. I wouldn't go into a store and pick up a guitar randomly and say, this sounds great, or not even play it and just buy it because I heard this sounds really good. You would want to play it and see how it feels and see how it reacts. Vocal mics are the same way. Instrumental mics are the same way. So you want to make sure that you're trying it anytime that you can. Great. Any other questions, Matt? Matt is looking very furrowed brow. Top norm, would a tube preamp have any benefit for a dynamic mic? I have never used one. Eric, have you ever used a tube? I haven't used a tube preamp for a dynamic. We're both going, meh? Yeah, I haven't used one. I haven't tried it. So top norm, I'd have to get back to you on that. I mean, tube amps sound better on everything. So, but I have not had the luxury of trying a tube preamp for a dynamic mic. So stand by. Let's see if we can get. Yeah, I mean, more of a vintage tone, Eric is saying. Good point. It could give you that warmer tone. But yeah, I have not experimented with that. So let me do some research. Yes. Great. Any other questions coming in? Okay, Dennis, do I have a recommendation for a home studio condenser mic? Does one need a mic costing thousands? Will such a mic make a much better recording detail-wise worth the money? Excellent questions. Okay, recommendation for a studio condenser mic for the home. I am using the KSM32. If you want to use something that is not quite as expensive as the KSM32, you could use something called the SM27. That is my favorite kind of Swiss Army studio mic. So if you're using that one, you can mic amps, you can mic vocals, you can mic drums, and it's a really more affordable price point. So do you have to spend thousands? No, you do not. You do have to buy one that's going to work in your room and in your space. And that really just comes with kind of experimentation. But the SM27 is a great option for an all-around, awesome sounding side address studio mic. And will such a mic make much better recording detail-wise? Honestly, I have recorded with very inexpensive mics. I've recorded with very expensive mics. And it really comes down to the performance, and it comes down to what you're recording into and what you're using post. So yes, you want to make sure that what you're capturing is good. As they say, garbage in, garbage out. So you want to make sure you're capturing the best possible performance you can, whether you're using a budget mic or an extremely expensive one. I think now we have a lot more freedom and flexibility based on some of the plugins that we can apply, but don't go crazy, Dennis. You can dive in without spending all the money. Okay. Any last questions? Last questions, last call. Oh, hold on. We got a straggler. From Rick, does the omnidirectional, cardioid, and figure 8 options on a condenser mic really work? I'm not sure what we're asking here, but do they really work? Do they really switch the polar patterns? Absolutely. Do they really work? It depends on what you're using them for. Omnidirectional means omni all, so it's going to pick up every surface of the mic. Cardioid's going to be that heart pattern, and figure 8 means that it's going to have both sides, front and back of the microphone open, like on this. So, yes, yes, they are. They really work. And okay. Last questions came in. I really appreciate all of you being here and hanging with me for this last hour so we could talk about Shure microphones, microphones in general, studio stage, and all the things. If I left anything out, blame Matt. No, if I left anything out, please hit us up. We'd love to answer those questions for you. And thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to L&M for having us, and have a great rest of your night.